And at my age, my main goal in life right now is to show everybody everything that I know that I was deprived of when I was an amateur.
Welcome to the Waterfowl East podcast. Today I'm joined by Mr. Lorn Langevin, international man of mystery, I'm going to say. He's got many titles, but that's the one I know him as, running border to border, training dogs, being pretty successful over the year. Welcome, Lorn.
Welcome to you, Matt. It's nice to talk to you again. I haven't seen you for a while.
It's been a day or two, hasn't it? Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the people a little bit more about your accolades and who you are, Lorn?
Yeah, I retired in ’89 from a company that I owned, and decided that I was going to go into buy a dog to hunt with. Okay, I couldn't shoot worth shit, but I figured if I had a good dog, he'd maybe be able to pick up somebody else's ducks and I could claim them. And so in '89, I ended up becoming a professional trainer after having thrown birds for a chap by the name of David Thompson, who was very successful in those days, and progressed from there. I have thrown a lot of birds for different people during a period of time, and then I was fortunate enough to be able to secure, you might say, a few really good dogs in which enabled me to have a little bit of success in the game. And I don't crow about successes, because you can be a champion on one Sunday and you can go out in the very first series on the next Sunday.
Absolutely.
So the idea of it is to not get disheartened because you didn't finish the trial. Don't get advised by your wife that you should quit this game. Don't start swearing and cursing at your kids because your dog didn't do well. Just keep on trotting along, and 90% of the time, try to slow down, or have a friend or have somebody that you can phone that knows a little bit more about it than what you do, that's not, bull crap, and ask him why you're having a trouble with a different thing. And now, 90% of my time, I have 8 dogs on the truck. Okay, I used to have like 20, 26, down to 8 dogs on the truck. And I spend more time now helping people train their dogs than I actually end up training my own. Yeah. And I do it the amateur way, not the pro way that knows everything there is to know about training dogs, but the amateur way.
Absolutely.
And try to give them a little bit of advice, not yelling and screaming at them and telling them that they're stupid, because training a dog is actually much more difficult than becoming an airplane pilot, believe it or not, because if you have 10 dogs, you maybe got 10 different dogs that have to be trained a little bit differently. And it's very, very difficult to make the people comprehend that a dog is maybe a little bit like a 2-year-old kid sitting in a high chair, okay? And you say to the kid, "What's 2 and 2?" And the kid says, "I don't know." And you give him a hell of a good slap side the head. And you ask him again, and he still can't. So what happens is the kid never learns. He just learns to duck. So in the case of a dog, the dog can't do something. What do? We have a tendency sometimes to get frustrated. The more competitive we are, we get more frustrated. And we use that almighty shock collar when the dog doesn't really understand what he is supposed to do. And then we always have the out, because the dog never throws us under the bus. We blame everything on the dog. We never take any responsibilities for ourselves. And that is basically what I try to tell the people. Try to keep it stupid simple, okay? When you do get into a bind, don't give up. You have to solve the problem. Give somebody a call that has more experience than you. Ask them basically what you're doing wrong, and be honest about it. Don't say that this dog is the greatest marker in the world when he's not. Tell the person exactly where you're having a little bit of a problem. Okay, you've got some very good people. You got Matt down there that's been training dogs for a long time. You've got guys like Walter Vesey that's very helpful to people. Okay, it's easy to find a person that's going to help you out. Okay, and that is my first advice. And starting off with amateurs, when they arrive with their, let's put it this way, 10-month-old puppy, you buy something from halfway decent breeding, you call people and you say, And instead of going and seeing Barnyard Billy, it has a load. It has a Labrador Retriever that he bred to, Tom Dickens' old Labrador Retriever, and you think that the dog is the greatest one in the world because you saw Tom Dickens' dog pick up a couple of ducks. There's a lot more to it than that. You have to watch out that the parents aren't fighters. They have to be birdie. They have to want to retrieve. Okay. I don't really care what color they are as long as they have a lot of desire. And I tell the people, if you're hell bent for lecture on buying a Labrador Retriever to go out and do hunt test work or field trial work, and start off with a hunt test work, maybe, just get yourself something that the parent, at least one of the parent, has a good pedigree. Doesn't have to be the father himself, maybe the grandfather. Like the two best dogs on my truck right now, their parent was not a field trial champion, but the grandparents were national field trial champions. Right. And that is what I look at. So breeding is very important. And please, people that are listening to this podcast, you want to buy a Labrador Retriever, you talk to somebody that's had success in there, and they will refer you to a good breeding. And just ask a few questions. The first dog that I bought, a Golden, I went to a picnic trial, which is a fake makeup trial. And a guy was coming off the line with a Golden, and I'm standing there with my wife. And I said to the man, if you were in this game, what kind of a dog would you buy? A Labrador or a Golden? Well, what the hell do you think he said? And my first Golden that I spent 2 years trying to train, was not birdie. He didn't want birds. He wanted to go sit beside my wife on the couch. And I became very disillusioned until I ran into this individual that had a Labrador that used to want to retrieve. And I said, I want a puppy the same as that. Okay.
Yeah,
and the
sense.
Father of that dog, was a killer. He wanted to fight with everything that walked. And I got myself a puppy out of this thing. He was a great dog. He wanted to retrieve, but he also wanted, and when he was 2 years old, he wanted to eat everybody that went close to him. Okay. And that's hereditary also.
Sure.
It was maybe a bit on his upbringing, but there are dogs out there that are pretty nasty. And now that I'm an old man, I can't put up with a nasty dog. I don't shoot him like I threatened to do. I just turn around and say, he's off my truck. Okay. Now the breeding pedigree that's gone on now is much better than it was in the old days, because we've had some national field trial champions that you had to have a chain on them when you were leading them off the line instead of a little rope. Okay. So it's a situation that is a very important question to ask the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to individuals down there that have a successful breeding program, okay, and ask them basically what they would recommend. Do you need a female? Depends on, some people are partial to females. Some people are partial to males. Personally, I like females better, dogs. Okay. And in this situation, because they're maybe a little bit more easygoing. I have a male on the truck that I own that's a great dog, and I have to deal with rambunctiousness out of that dog. Right. And it's a situation in which I don't think I'll ever get him quieted down till he's about 8 or 9 years old. That means that I'm going to be 8 or 9 years older also. I have a little female that's 3 years old. If you yell at her, she more or less looks at you and says, oh gosh, don't scold me too much. Just show me what you want to do. And that's very easy to take. Okay. Now, the heat cycle, here's another thing that people will say. I have a female, I don't like the heat cycle. Have her spayed. It doesn't make a stinking bit of difference on their ability to be retrievers if they're spayed or not spayed, as long as you don't spay them when they're 6 months old. Maybe wait till they've had a heat, and then you can have them spayed. They lose nothing in their desire to retrieve. Okay. You might have to feed them a little bit less food, but there is something to remember. The guy says, oh God, I can't have that dog spayed because she won't want to retrieve anymore. Bull crap. Okay. I can tell you that right now, it doesn't make a bit of difference for their birdiness. So there's one point covered. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So, you started into a good train of thought there with, what people should look for when they get a dog. If they already have a dog, they should always look for mentorship. all the way through their career, we'll say, so to speak, as a dog trainer and a retriever trainer. But one thing I notice around here, and I'm sure it's in many other places in Canada and North America, we'll just say, is a lot of people start out in junior. You know, they get their dog to club training, their dog's doing some marks on land, they're doing some marks on water. They run an event, they get a couple ribbons, and they're just hooked. They're just addicted, and they want to go back out and run another trial, and then they get the junior title, and then all of a sudden the next step is senior, which, as you know, is a lot of time and effort, and people have a hard time bridging that gap. And I'm sure you see this as well, even in field trials from junior to qual. So what would your advice be to people that are up-and-comers, like you're speaking about with picking a puppy, or people that already have a puppy? What would your advice be for people like that are trying to get through the program and get to the next level?
Okay, a perfect example is, so you have a little dog that is, I don't know, 4 months old, and it wants to run out and pick stuff up. Okay, it's very difficult to teach a dog to run out there and get something or run out to it. The training part is a return. Okay, so I've got a little 4-month-old puppy here that doesn't come when he's called, because the word here to him doesn't mean anything. So what I do is that I take another person and set him basically halfway the distance between home plate and first base. And they kneel down on one knee, and they have a little bit of food, kibble with them. And I have the dog, and it might have to be on a rope, and she's going to turn around and call that dog with the word here. She's not going to say Benji here, she's just going to say here. Okay? The dog eventually is either pulled to her or runs to her, because she's clapping her hands and everything like that. And when the dog gets there, it doesn't have to sit or anything like that. You just give it that little kibble of food. And the person says, yeah, but they don't like their kibble that well. Well, get a cut-up hot dog then. Something that they're really going to, or rotten sardine. Most dogs will either roll on it or eat it. Then you turn around and you call it back. Well, at the end of a couple of days, and you only do this, maybe she calls the dog the first time 5 times, and you call it back to you 5 times, and you're only 25 feet apart, and that's the end of the lesson. Now, you do not take that dog and let it run around and do whatever it wants to do. You put this dog into what I call confinement. You either put it back in his cage, his kennel. If you have a dog truck that has a kennel on it, you put him in there, and you leave the dog to think about just what went on for at least 2 hours. Okay? Then you can turn around and you can let the dog out, and it gets a little bit of enjoyment, but it has to have learned confinement, okay, so that it appreciates whatever the task at hand is a little bit more. Goes back in, goes home, might end up playing a little bit with the kids and stuff like that, but then you're undoing it because it doesn't listen to the kids. The kids don't have any food, so really you're going 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So you're training the dog, and you try to get it to do that, and you might do that a couple of times a day. Eventually what you're going to work into is you're going to have 3 people if you can. You have your oldest daughter, your youngest son, and yourself, and they've all got food, and they call it here, and the dog runs to them, and they give them a little morsel. Then they make the dog sit, and somebody else calls it. The dog runs over, and they give it a little morsel of food. Then maybe you call it, and you give it a little morsel of food. And you get to whoever says here to it, it runs, but it's acknowledging the word here. So it starts to come, okay, when it hears that wording.
Right.
Now, that's not difficult. You do that for a week, and you're going to have that dog breaking almost. It's going to sit down, grab the food, take off, want to leave, and go to the next guy.
Sure.
What you eventually work onto this is that you're the only one that feeds the dog, but it still listens to the here from the other people. Okay, now you've got your dog listening. You're out in the backyard here, and the dog comes running to you. You've just taught him the simplest way. You don't have to feed him, here, and you give him a little bit of a tap on the side of the cheek or whatever and say, hey, good dog, and then you go about doing whatever you want to do. That is how you teach a dog to come the amateur way. Okay, the pro would maybe put him on a choke chain and yank the living hell out of him. So it's a situation in which that is the way you teach the dog the word here with food. Now, the next thing you have to do when you're doing this little drill, the dog has to be sitting still. So after you've given the dog a little morsel of food, you point him out towards the other two people, wherever they're sitting, one at the pincher's mound, one at first base, and one at your place. And you turn around and you make the dog sit, and you keep repeating that word, sit, sit. And you push his bum down on the ground. And the person, when the dog is totally steady and just sitting there and looking at the person, you say, okay, call him. You don't have to say it, you nod your head. And as soon as they say here, the dog is allowed to leave. But now you're steadying that dog down. He's not doing an alligator roll on you. He's not jumping up, licking your face or anything like that. You're teaching the dog to be able to settle. Okay? And you do that maybe for 3 or 4 days, and all of a sudden you're going to see the dog is automatically going to sit, because sit means I'm going to get a reward and I'm going to get called. So now you're knocking off 2 things, and you're doing this maybe in your own kitchen. You can't use the excuse it's too cold, it's too warm, it's raining. You can do it in the house. You have your person, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, and the other one's in a bedroom, and the dog goes from one to the other, bing, bang, left, right, and center. So now you've taught the dog the almighty word here, okay? And now you can go out and you want to see if this dog will retrieve. And you've already maybe thrown tennis balls for him. The dog picks it up and takes off, tearing off over to neighbors because he doesn't know what the word here means. If you turn around and you sit in the hallway of your house and you use whatever, your wife's cooking glove, anything you want, and you throw it. The dog runs out there, picks it up. The doors are closed to all the other rooms. It's a confined area. You say here, and he comes running back to you. And you rub his belly, and you tell him he's the greatest dog. He's jumped on you and everything like that, okay? You set him down. Again, he has to be steady. He cannot leave when that glove that you're throwing is halfway in the air. He has to try and sit there until the glove hits the ground. You send him, he picks it up, he comes running back to you. You do that for a week. Now he's going out, coming back, going out, coming back. Now you go outside on your front lawn and you throw a thing, maybe, or you have somebody else throw it 10 feet. He runs out, picks it up, comes running back with it. If he drops it, doesn't matter, as long as he comes running back. Now you've got your dog doing little short retrieves.
Right.
Now Johnny Boy, the guy that knows everything about dog training, says, let's try to see how far we can get your dog to go. Okay? And you are enthused by that because you want some bragging rights. That's the worst thing you can do. Teach him the basics of going and coming, picking something up, coming back, okay, at the maximum, 35, 40 yards. And so he's going to watch this article that's going through the air. He's going to pick it up, and his first impression is to run back to you because they're creatures of habit, and that's the only thing that he's been shown. Pick it up, run back to the guy that's standing there that sent me. Now you're 3/4 of the way there, but you don't even realize it. Now what you have to do is the dog is maybe 9 months old, 8 months old, depending on his advancement. Then you go and you see an individual that knows a little bit about force fetching, and that is what we call force breaking a dog. That is the first real pressure that is put on an animal.
And probably the most misunderstood part of training, and the part that's skipped the absolute most.
I advise, it's a boring job, guy. I advise that you take your puppy and you go to somebody that's had success doing it.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, I am training with an individual this morning here, okay, before we broke for the podcast, who force fetched his own dog, and this dog puts the bird down, shakes, comes back in, doesn't really want to give it up when he gets to the guy, okay? And I asked him this morning, how long did you take to force fetch the dog? He said, this dog is amazing. He turns around and he said, in 2 days, that dog was holding when I told him. I said, in 2 days. I said, so in the last 2 years, you've just taught this dog to put it down on the ground, shake, and stuff like that. And he didn't really understand what the hell I meant. I said, if you go to a pro, okay, and you turn around and you tell him that I have a problem with him putting this duck down, I can honestly assure you, he can. If he's a good pro, he's going to be able to take over, and he's going to be able to correct that problem. But it's not going to be done in a week. It's not going to be done in 2 weeks. It might take 2 months for him to get that straightened around, because you've created a habit. He has to undo the habit and teach him the right way of doing it. So force fetching is something that I don't necessarily advise, okay, a person to try to do on his own unless he has supervision from somebody that knows what they're doing. I use a table in order to force fetch. The people say, oh, well, I don't have a table. Well, the only reason why I have a table is because I'm an old man. And if I'm crouched down on one knee trying to force fetch him, okay, I start to have aches and pains. So I have a little table that I keep him on, okay? And the first time that I put him on that table, I run him up and down the table to show him, because it's the first time he's been off the ground, that it's not a danger point. It's something. And it doesn't take long. They start running back and forth. And that's the only thing you teach the dog that day. Okay, you don't say, well, he went up and down the table once, now I'm going to crank on him, because he's liable to say, shit, that table is not a safe place because I get cranked on. Exactly. And I put the thing, I put it in their mouth, say fetch, open their mouth by putting my fingers into their combusted teeth in the back, force it open by squeezing a little bit, okay? And first thing I know, the animal is slowly opening his mouth. I put it in, I take it out. I'm not trying to teach the dog whole right now. I'm trying to teach the dog just to open his mouth to fetch. Okay, so that is really what is very important. Now I am 95% of the way there when the dog is doing that. And then after a while, I ear pinch. I will put my fingers inside the ear with my nail on my thumb, and I will say fetch, and I will apply pressure. And as soon as that bumper is in that dog's mouth, or he opens his mouth, I put it in and I take the pressure off. Okay, now that sounds complicated, and in some instances it can be complicated. And that is the reason why that I say maybe you can go to somebody that has done it numerous times before, that is successful at it, or a pro in the area, or somebody that's a whatever, that can force fetch your dog. But don't say, I'll pick him up next week, because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, okay? Absolutely. I mean, that's the most important part.
That's right. Because the first thing that's going to be no doubt done is that person is going to have to put a little obedience into your dog. He's going to have to get him acclimatized to a different environment. He's going to have to do all of that. Okay, when I was full-time pro and everything like that, I put a 3-month minimum onto it. You're sending me the dog in. You're paying for 3 months, even though when you got home after leaving the dog here, your wife said, oh, I missed Hauser, and you came and got him. I'm sorry, you're paying 3 months.
For
and
sure.
That stopped people taking the dogs home, because it's not fair to me, it's not fair to Matthew, and it's not fair to the dog if you do something like that, okay? So now you've got the dog that you can actually put him on a lead, go for a little bit of a walk, and he holds whatever you give him. It doesn't have to be a bumper. It can be anything that he is pleased with. A pee bag, for crying out loud. And he walks around, and you can lead him, and you can say, sit to him, push his bum down you don't beat him down, you just push his bum down. Eventually he'll walk all over the place with this thing in your mouth without mouthing it. The minute that he starts to rolling or chewing like my father used to chew on a cigar, you stop, you put your hand on the top, the hand on the bottom, okay, and you say hold very softly. You don't hurt the dog. You don't lose your patience. The reason why that a lot of people, okay, have a problem realizing that, they don't do it long enough. They do it 2 or 3 times, and then they say, oh, that's good enough. So what you have to realize onto it, it might end up taking you 2 weeks to be able to get that dog to hold that whatever item that you've got in his mouth. I use a dumbbell, okay, a wooden peg that's about 1 inch in diameter with 2 square pieces on the end. So it's like a dumbbell that you would use to put muscle on your arm or something like that because they can pick it up. And you try to slowly, when you're force fetching, you hold it in your hand. Then you start moving it to the ground, to the ground, to the ground. And if you, 90% of the cases, put it immediately on the ground, the dog won't pick it up. And you say, well, why? Picks it up when I have it holding out in front of him in my hand, because you've just created a different environment. So when you put it on the ground, put your hand on it. Okay? And you might find that after a couple of days, he'll pick it up fairly readily when your hand's there. Then you take your hand away, okay? And again, he doesn't necessarily want to pick it up. So now you can apply a little bit of ear pressure onto him. But the force fetching aspect of it used to be pound him up. I can remember reading a book that James Lamb Free wrote, and it was a situation that once you start, you have to get it done with. And so it's either literally pound the hell out of him the first time, okay, and get it done, but don't take your time in doing it. And now it's totally, totally different. I sometimes will take close to 3 weeks, 4 weeks to force fetch a dog properly, okay? And the thing that you have to refrain from, people say, oh, don't throw marks for it when you're doing that because it'll take away from it. But they don't tell you why. I'll tell you why. When you throw a mark for it, the dog runs out there, picks it up, puts it down on the ground, comes back in, puts it down on the ground 3 or 4 times, adjusting its hole. You're teaching that dog to do that when the mark is thrown. He's not ready to have a mark. You have to be able to toss the thing out 2 feet in front of him. He goes, he picks it up, and he comes back to you. Then you have to be able to put the thing on the ground, walk along as you were taking him for a walk, get to it, fetch, and he has to bend down and pick that thing up with his tail wagging. Okay? So again, I reiterate, it sounds easy for me because I've been doing it for a long time, but for the new person, spend the little bit of money that it's going to cost to get it done by somebody that knows what they're doing.
So you don't throw marks while you're doing force fetch, huh?
No, but the only reason why I don't is because I don't want that dog to get into the habit of mouthing a bird when he gets out there, not coming back, etc., etc. I want that force, that picking up that bird clean, releasing it clean, okay, before I start doing it. It doesn't take anything away from not teaching the dog marks at 8 months, 9 months for 3 weeks, a month. We think it maybe destroys their marking. Bull crap. Okay? What you want, you get yourself into a problem. He starts putting it down, picking it up, putting it down, picking it up. What the hell are you going to do? You turn around and you say to the dog, or the first thing we do, we lose our temper. We walk out there, we grab the dog, and we slam the thing into his mouth. So we've just told them, when you get this thing, when you don't pick it up, you get hurt. Okay? And what happens is that then all of a sudden you start walking up to him and he runs away from you. We call that bolting.
Right.
And I used to see it all the time. Somebody tried to force fetch this dog and beat it. It's like the dog that doesn't want to come and then finally relinquishes and does come. Okay? And he comes to you and you beat the shit out of him. Excuse the expression. Do you think that that's the way to teach a dog to come? No. Even though you'd like to kick him in the ass, you have to bend down and say, good dog, good dog, good dog. I'm soaking wet now. We've been out here 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the pouring rain. You're looking at me, wagging your tail, barking at me. But finally you came. So I have to say to you, thank you very much for coming. To hell with the idea that it took you 5 minutes and I'm soaking wet.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, and it's on the handler at that point. You know, it's people get mad at the dog, but the dog at the end of the day did what they wanted finally. It's up to them to make sure that it doesn't happen again, you know, teach them.
Well, it's true. Or if it does happen again, it took you 5 minutes the first time. It only took you 4 minutes the second time. You've made progress. Okay,
no question.
But if you grab that dog and yank him around when he comes in, I can tell you it is going to take 5 minutes the second time. It's going to take 6 minutes the second time. Okay, so again, that goes back to the old food thing here. I have had dogs that I have force fetched that the here word meant more than the force word. Okay? And really, then I needed a retrieve. This is the thing. All of a sudden I said, my God, he's getting out there halfway and he's turning around and he's running back to me. That here thing, the food, He was so possessive so I shorten the mark up, throw it again. Okay. The dog goes out, picks it up. There's no praise on the comeback. It's you did the job you're supposed to. Because if I make a big fuss about him, I'm encouraging him to run out there halfway and come running back to me. So those, again, are all little things that you have to be careful for. That's complicated to understand.
So once you're done your force fetch, Lorn,
yeah,
is that normally when you collar condition, or do you collar condition before?
Well, I'm going to tell you, and I don't advise this to everybody, but I collar condition for here before, because I don't particularly want the dog running across the road. Okay?
I do too. Yep, I do too.
I will put a dog on a rope, okay, a 25, 30-foot rope, depending, as long as it doesn't get strapped around my legs and I get rope burn. And I will say here, and I'll give him a little tug. And I'll do that maybe the first day here, and I give him a little tug, okay, because he's a wild animal. Plus, my wife has let him out in the backyard, and he does whatever he wants the 8 hours that I'm at work trying to get food for her. And I turn around, and then I use the collar here, and I nick the dog on a very low level. Okay, most of the time I'll do that on a high 3, and the dog will get so that he will come to the burn. So you have really adjusted the collar a little bit. I don't go through the proper Lardy sequence of you have to teach sit first and all that. Now I've got a renegade that won't come when he's called. Okay, and if you want to see me get pissed off, come and train with me. Bring your 8-month-old dog out of the truck and try and get him to come back to you when he's running around and he's visiting all the stations that I have out there, picking up a bird or smelling a bird that he's never seen before. Sometimes you might say to the guy, go get your goddamn dog. Okay, and that's not what should happen. So in this situation, if he has a little bit of here nick to him, you can most likely get him under control. You have to control yourself not to put the thing on a high level and try him. Okay, so that's basic. The start, introducing that dog a little bit to the collar.
Yeah. And do you do collar fetch at the end, or?
Exactly. No, I do the collar fetch, and it's on my way. It's not maybe your way. I do the collar fetch after he is collar conditioned. Now, here is the other thing. The amateur comes in, you say, did you collar condition him? You say, yep, I did. What'd you collar? What level did you collar condition? Oh, you soft. I did it on a 2. That's not collar conditioning a dog on a 2. That's like what they're doing down in the States right now. You go in and you rob a bank and they put you out on bail, but you don't have to pay any money.
Yeah.
So you go out and you rob another one tomorrow. Collar conditioning, I start with every dog on a low 4. And the person will say, well, you wouldn't be able to do that with my dog because it would fold. Well, I'm sorry to say it wouldn't. It depends on how long you hold your finger on the button. That is a thing. So if you have a low 4 and you just go tick like that, and the dog does an alligator roll because he was so surprised, he didn't get hurt, he was surprised, you immediately think that that's too high a level. It's not. It's not, because later on in life, when they get to be 3 or 4 years old and you've collar conditioned him on a 2 and you send him into me and I nail him for climbing up on or refusing to get on a point with a 4 or a 5, okay, that's going to do damage. Then he's going to say, I never want to get onto a point again. I never want to retrieve again. And trying to break that habit is very, very difficult on an older dog. So the length of time that you hold your finger on the button when you're collar conditioning, and that is one of the reasons why you have maybe a momentum. The guy that can't control himself. Put your collar on momentum. Sit, nick. Okay? The old philosophy that you had to hold the button down till his ass got on the ground. No. You're collar conditioning. You're not trying to teach the dog to sit. You use that because there's only 2 direct pressures, here and sit. Get out of the garbage is not a command that you give a dog to collar condition him. If you're trash breaking him because he's the neighbor, he runs over the neighbors and does that, you can do that. You make that garbage can so hot that he doesn't want to have anything. But collar conditioning is for that dog to get reprimanded, might go, yep, like that. But now it's all over, guy. Let's get back to the lesson. And when you're collar conditioning, the thing that I teach my guys. If you want to do it yourself, I will walk around. I take sit for the first thing. The first day, I just do sit, touch him on the bum, maybe with a whip, push him down with my hand, teach him what the word sit means. Now he's sitting fairly rapidly, okay, with no collar pressure, no pressure, but he's wearing a collar, okay? This collar, you make a little bit of a fuss about. He sees the collar, oh God, I'm going for a walk, instead of the guy that says, I don't want to come out of the truck when you see that collar.
That's right.
So then you go and you touch him, just tightly sit, touch him with a whip, tickle him, as we say. And you do that for a couple of days. And now all of a sudden that dog is sitting. And here is one other thing too, because this thing can go into hours and months, is the fact that we have a tendency to walk 25 feet and say sit. Then we turn around and we walk back 25 feet and we say sit. I don't do it that way. I say sit 25 times in 25 feet. Sit. Come. I don't use the word here. I use the word come. Come, sit. Come, sit. Come, sit. You'll see at the end of a couple of days, that dog will come, sit, and he'll sit his ass on the ground so fast, it's unbelievable. That's going to be a big helping hand, because he's not then going to start writing his name when you blow a whistle for him to sit. And that's something that, it's so elementary. But I had to do it the other way for 20 years before I realized that I can sit the dog 25 times in 25 feet instead of one time. And he gets into the mode, oh, we're going for a walk. Oh, shit, he said sit. I think I heard him say sit. So he wiggles his ass down like a chicken sitting on a nest. Okay, I want that dog sit, bang, and I pull up on him, okay, at the same time. So there's a little piece of advice that will teach your dog to sit and enjoy sit. Okay, you don't hurt him. You simply say sit, come, sit. Now you're going to turn around and say, why do you use the word come instead of here? Well, the dog is out in the field, you say here, and the dog comes running to you, okay? You turn around, and now you're saying here, okay, when you start walking away. So what happens? Go to your first test, and you say here to the dog, and he walks out 6 inches. Then you say here again, and he walks out 6 inches. Well, unless you have an extendable arm, okay, the only thing that I'm saying to you is that the dog is going to be out, out, out. And you're saying here, and the dog is actually moving forward, okay, instead of coming to your kneecap. You've given him the same command, and you want him to do 3 different things. You want him to bring his ear over to your knee, which means here. It means you're out in the field, I say here. So the smart dog, even though we call him stupid, the smart dog moves out a little bit when you say here. Because he's so used to you taking off walking, hearing the word here, he automatically does it. He caught on a hell of a lot quicker. So I use the word come when I start walking with my dog.
Okay.
Okay. That has literally eliminated a little bit of the moving ahead, extending your arm, extending your arm, extending your arm. And that is the gospel truth. Think of it in 2 ways. You just can't give the same command for 2 different things. You have to be able to say, this dog is not a human being. He does not understand the word here other than to when I take off walking. So use the word come when you're doing it. The guy says, yeah, but I don't want him to come. I don't care. Use bullshit for the word when you take off walking. Just don't use the word here. Okay? Whole thing. So those are little advices that you get when you've got a puppy and you want him to retrieve, and you want to go out with your buddy and you want to turn around and throw a 50-yard, 60-yard, 70-yard mark for him that he can't do, and it's all the stuff. And it's say that all of a sudden your dog is doing a good job on force fetching or something like that, and you go out and you throw a mark for him, and he has a tendency to pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. Then the next day you're training, it's going to be in the backyard, the 5-foot circle, as Pat Burns calls it. And you're going to go back to force fetch and reinforce force fetch. And you're maybe going to do it a couple of days and reinforce force fetch. Okay? And that is the reason. You don't go out there and see, well, I wonder if he's going to do it today, because you rest assured he is going to do it. Okay? The idea of the collar condition, you work on sit. I generally work on sit about 3 days. The first day, I teach him basically to sit. Then I go into teaching him that he doesn't have to do an alligator roll. I nicked him on a low 4. Okay. And don't forget, the dog is not 4 months old. He's 7, 8, 9, a little bit of a renegade. Okay. And I'll do that for maybe 2 days. Sit until he's no longer doing what we call the alligator roll, jumping up on his thing, twisting around, trying to get away from me. Then I go to the here. I set him out 6 feet in front of me. I pull him towards me and I say here. After 2 days of doing this, then I pull on the rope, nick here, and the dog comes running into me. Okay? And then I try to put the dog out a little bit further on a 25 foot. And I say here and I don't burn. And then I say here and I might nick. Okay? And I nick 3 times out of the 6 or 7 times that I called him, and I put him up. I don't try and do it 25 times. I can remember listening to a person that made a video that said, when you're doing T work or you're doing some sort of work with the dog, you have to do it to the degree that the dog eventually says, I don't want to do it anymore. And you turn around and you make him do it. That is the farthest thing from the truth, boy.
That used to be the way, though, didn't it?
Oh, Jesus, it used to be. And that was the thing, the old story of forcing a dog to a pile. Now I do it from frontal sit. I don't tell my amateur to do it from their side, as I was just reading a book this morning that said, this is the way you force to a pile. You put the dog at your side and you send him. No, I put him in front of me. And he goes down there back, and he goes down, he picks the thing up. And then comes back in. I might be back, nick, on the way to the pile on a very, very momentum type of burn. Okay? And I'll do that maybe for a week at a pile that is maybe 60 feet out there. White bumpers, he can see it. If I use too much pressure, he's going to think that he's not supposed to go there. So forcing to the pile, yeah, very careful, people. There's a situation where you don't do it enough because you don't do it at all, or there's a situation where you do too much of it, you get the dog bolting, flaring, and everything. But if you put the dog in front of you and you throw a bumper for him and you say back, and he runs out and he picks it up, theoretically, the next time you throw the bumper for him and you say back, Nick, and he goes out and he picks it up, you're theoretically teaching that dog to take off despite the fact that he got a burn on the collar. The burn on the collar is not teaching that dog to go back. It's teaching that dog to think, be able to think through the process, okay, of having to do the duty at hand without bolting, rolling over on his back, pissing himself, and stuff like that. The old-fashioned way, I can remember when I started, honey, I'm going to take Josie out and I'm going to force her to the pile today. And I come back in, my wife would say, how'd it go? Oh, boy, is she ever going down to that pile? 100 miles an hour. It's a wonder she doesn't break her back trying to stop on the pile. Oh, did you burn her? No, I didn't burn her today. Tomorrow's the day that I come back in. How'd it go? Well, it didn't go that well. You know Tommy Evans, like a neighbor that's down the street? Yeah, well, he was good enough to catch the dog when it ran up on a porch. So, maybe the dog likes Tommy Evans better than he likes, I don't know, but that son of a going to listen to me tomorrow. I'm going to crank that collar. I'm going to do it. Okay? And the next day, didn't go to Tommy Evans' place. It went to Evans's place. It was a half a mile down there, and I'm out 7 o'clock at night looking for the goddamn dog. Okay? And I went that on a... So I get back in after this. My wife, oh, how did the... It's the stupidest dog I've ever owned. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get rid of her. I'm going to sell her to some guy that's a hunter because she's no good for what I'm trying to do. And that is the farthest thing from the truth now, people. You do it, number one, you have your force pile up against a fence or a building. You don't put it in the middle of your lawn where it can run over top of it. It can only go to the pile. And you don't have to kill them. Okay? You're going to have plenty of occasions, if the dog gives you a no-go, to be able to step up on the dog, hear, burn, or, a little nick, and then send it, and the dog takes off. It learns what happens to it if it doesn't take off. Forcing to the pile, in my mind, and I know people are it and said, Lorn, you're full of shit, is so over-exaggerated. I was told again by a pro, you had to force it to the pile from 6 different positions. You had to put the dog in back of you and say force. You had to put the dog beside you and burn. And you had to put the dog out in front of you and burn. And then you had to do that on the other side. And when I was trying to do it that way, I spent more time trying over to neighbors trying to find my dog, okay, or he'd be under the truck, okay. And when I was chasing Chesapeakes, I was just about ready to write a book on how do you get a male 2-year-old Chesapeake that's growling like hell out from out of your truck without losing finger. I never wrote it because all of a sudden I realized that I didn't have to put that much pressure. Okay. People say Chesapeakes are bullheaded. In a roundabout way they might be. They have their way of doing things, so you just have to take a little bit more time. Paul McKinnon over at PEI got a fantastic test. Okay.
I'm losing you a little bit there, Lorn.
Can you hear me now?
I can now. Yeah, you were just I just barely heard what you said there.
Okay. Well, Paul over in PEI has a great Chesapeake, and somebody should give out his phone number and you can call him and ask him questions. Okay. And he takes it really slow. I think the dog right now is 3 or 4 years old, and now he's contemplating and running qualifying competitively.
Yeah, he is. He is. Yeah, he ran one this year and got a CM.
Right on.
Very first one.
There is an individual that is worthwhile talking to, because I tell you, he has asked me enough questions. He has asked Kevin Sheff enough questions.
Yeah.
And that is all stuff that basically is very important. He's a very, very patient man.
Very much so. Great handler.
And so in this situation here, perfect guy to talk to. And I can guarantee you he would say, yep. Or there's another individual out there is Matthew. Call him and say, what should I do? My dog is doing this. And he will try to lead you, but don't be surprised that he says, come on over. Okay, I'll give you, and I used to charge a lesson fee, okay, an hour. And there's a possibility he might do the same thing as a dentist does, as a doctor does, as everybody does. And he will actually show you maybe what to do. Okay, and it's money well spent. But don't walk away from his property and say, well, all he wants is money, because he can't do it for free.
No, that's for sure. Yeah.
It's not a $50 fee or a $75 fee is a drop in a bucket to learn how to force a dog and to collar condition a dog. Okay. If you can't afford the $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever the charge per month is, okay, be ready to pay for some private lessons. And when he gives you homework to do, you go home and you do the homework. Because a lot of times the people did not do the homework. Well, we as pros, the next time you come in, we know if you did the homework or not. We're not going to turn around and say, well, you were a fibber, but we know whether you did the homework.
Well, and everything that you've brought up so far, I mean, those are all fundamental skills. I mean, force fetch, collar conditioning, obedience, teaching your puppy, all the way up through are all fundamental, foundational skills. And we've been talking about this a lot lately about what makes a great open all-age dog, a dog that's got solid fundamentals, you know.
That's right.
All the way through, you know. So when we're talking about this today, I mean, we are talking about junior and senior level dogs, people trying to get involved, bridge that next gap, and we'll continue on with it. But all the way through, this stuff has got to be a way of life. This is how you're successful. And in any test or any trial, what's going to get you through is solid fundamental skills. A dog that, you know, in the 10th series will pay attention, you know.
Yep. Now, here's another thing. That you made a comment when we first started off, the bridging gap from getting a junior hunter, okay, to going up to senior hunter. The big difference is the dog has to have a little bit of memory, okay? In order for me to teach a young dog, an 8-9-month-old dog, memory, I go out on cut grass, I take 3 bumpers, or if this dog is maybe a little bit backwards, I'll take 2 bumpers. And I have him sitting beside me. He has to be steady. He can't break. He has to be steady. So if I throw it and he starts wiggling around, I make him sit there, okay, and wait to the count of 1,000. Okay, and I might say 1,000. I don't mean 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 1,000. I mean, just say 1,000. Okay, then I throw the other one, and it's a big white bumper, and it's out there 30 feet on cut grass, and I send it for him. And he goes out and he picks it up. And then he comes back, and he's licking my hand and everything like that. He's totally forgot about the other one. So you try to put him in a position, okay, that he's going to see that white bumper out there, and you send him. And 2 days later, 3 days later at the max, he's going to come in, pick one up, and wheel and be ready for the next one. So you've just taught him memory. You can get 2. Now you go into 3. You throw 1 at third base, 1 at second base, 1 at first base. Okay? And the dog goes out, and eventually he comes in and he wheels for all of the memory birds. And then you turn around and you end up talking to me in the old days, and you say, I can't teach this dog memory. I don't have anybody to throw multiples for him. And man, that's the farthest thing from the truth. Mm-hmm. I didn't have anybody to teach a puppy how to remember 3 things.
Me neither.
I threw 3 things. And if you have a great dog, you can maybe throw 4 out there. And you've just extended that dog's memory. So when you do get into senior, as we say, and all you've done is junior marks, your dog is already, he'll catch on to the double aspect very quickly. Now, one thing, too, we're getting a little bit ahead of myself here, is the fact that now you've got to teach this dog to stop on a whistle. So you don't go out and immediately say, well, the guy told me to stop the dog on the whistle on the way to the pile of the bumpers. Okay? You go and you do a little bit of your walking in around the yard, sit, okay? And you might end up even having to nick the dog a little bit. Sit, he's got to respond very quickly. Then you go out at a different location. You have a rope on the dog, okay? Now, this is where you have to be careful, people, thinking it. You've already nicked back to the pile. And then you turn around and you send the dog to the pile, and you blow the whistle and you burn. And all of a sudden, the dog shifts the thing into 4th gear and over the hill. Well, shit, you just forced him to go faster. Now you're not telling him anything because he doesn't understand the word, well, today's a different lesson. So you go a little bit to a different location, okay? And you want this dog to stop on a whistle. First thing we used to do, okay, and a lot of you maybe still do, is that we let the dog get out there 35 yards or 30 yards, and then we blew the whistle, and he said, oh, you rang, sir, and he gives you a great big letter J and sits. And you say, wow, he's sitting on the whistle. He ain't sitting on a whistle. He's going out there and he's writing his name in the snow, like you maybe did when you used to argue with your fellows that you could write your entire name, okay? Basically what you do is you go out there, you're maybe in a different location, or you can be on the pile to the thing, and you say back to the dog, and the dog gets 5 feet in front of him, and you hit him with a whistle. Toot! Like that. And you surprise the shit out of him, but all of a sudden his ears go back and he stops. Okay? But he doesn't look at you. He's still looking at the pile. So you coax him around here, and then you back, give him a remote send. And you do that again. The next time he comes up, back, he runs out there, toot, and he's only 5 feet from you, but he's stopping. Okay? And you do that for a couple of days. Now, the problem being is that because you do that, you're not hurting him, you're not burning him, you might have a rope on him and make sure that he doesn't run through it. Because if you burn him for the sit, okay, in that predicament, you might get him so that he reverts back to the fact that he's supposed to be steady, so he refuses to lose your side. And that's a totally different story. There's a different correction for that, which we won't cover today. But you stop the dog in the first 5 feet, and he will start stopping. And then you stop him 10 feet. Then you stop him 15 feet. Then you stop him 20 feet. And you progress. And man, when you run into Matthew Wilson at a trial, he's going to say, who in the hell taught that dog how to sit? I wish my dogs did that. And that's the way it's done.
So do you always normally have a rope on your dogs regardless?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I stop them with a rope.
Yep.
I stop them with a rope, and all I say is make sure you have gloves on, because a rope burn, there's nothing worse than a rope burn. Don't have it twisted around your leg. Don't tie it to your $38 belt that you bought at Davy Crockett's store, because you're liable to pull the son of a bitch in two. And that is another thing that I've tried, tying it around my waist, okay, and it doesn't work. So you get the dog stopping at 5 feet, then 6 feet, then 7 feet, and eventually he'll stop at 30 feet, and you're 90% of your way on the idea of being able to go into a T program, okay, and being almost ready to run senior.
Right, and that's
Okay,
it, and
the dog
having
will
a
stop.
having a solid sit, and like you said, not just a sit where the dog will stop at some point when it, gradually slows
Yeah.
down, like wheels around and almost falls over because it sits down so quick.
Exactly. Now I shouldn't say you never. I've got a couple of dogs that dig holes, as you said. What I want that dog to stop in a 3-foot circle.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a dog that continues running for 3 or 4 feet, but sits right on the line that you blew it on, it's okay. But you don't want it giving a big curl, as we call it, and ended up behind a tree. Because not too many of them can see through a tree to get a cast. So that is the thing. You get that sit down. Okay. Now, basically what you're doing is you might end up, in order to reinforce it a little bit, stop the dog when he's coming back. And again, you don't try and stop him at 40 feet. You stop him when he's 5 feet from you. And you throw your foot out and your hand out. You do whatever you can to get that dog to sit, because he's not used to doing it. He's used to coming in. So basically what I do is that I do the traffic cop type of thing. I step towards him, throw my hand out into his face, and blow the whistle. And then all of a sudden, I can maybe stop him at 10 feet, 15 feet, because now he is whistle prone, sit prone, whatever you want to call it. And that is my training lesson for the day. I don't then go in and say, well, let's set up the here drill where I want you to have a piece of food, me have a piece of food, and my daughter have a piece of food. I leave him, sit him, put him up for a while on the sit drill. That is how elementary training a dog to be able to sit on a whistle is. And the guy says, well, it didn't work for me. No, because you tried to stop the dog at 30 feet, or people brag to me and say, I can get that dog stopped when he's 1 foot from the pile. Okay, and I say, good. And I send you the rest of my dogs that don't do that. Maybe you could train them to do it.
Well, that's the thing. People get a false sense of security. Like if you stop the dog when it doesn't, the reason that we stop the dog so quick is because then it doesn't have momentum. But once it builds up momentum, if you say, well, I'm going to go from 10 feet to 40 feet, and the dog's got that much more momentum. Well, if you don't have a rope on the dog, then all of a sudden at 40 feet, it's got more momentum towards the pile, and you blow the whistle, and then maybe it makes a big loopy sit, or it takes a lot longer to stop, and then you've got yourself, like you said, cranky, upset, and thinking that you want to use the collar, things like that. Whereas, like you say, the rope is a physical tool to physically show that dog, hey, when I blow that whistle, you got to stop right away. Put the brakes on. Lock it up. Turn around and look.
And it's so simple. What I'm telling you to do, stop the dog at 5 feet. Don't stop the dog at 50 feet. And you say, well, he's going to have to stop at 50 feet. Yeah, when he stops at 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, and 8 feet, someday he will stop. You do enough of it, okay? And you don't spend an hour doing it. You say the first time he didn't stop really good. The second time he stopped 5% better. The third time he stopped really good. Put him up. That's your training for the day. Okay? That's the hardest thing to do. Once he has succeeded in the task that you're trying to teach him, now you can take him out 2 or 3 hours later and try it again, or you can wait till tomorrow and do it. Okay? This is the point you have.
And it's not every send either that you're stopping. You're
no, because then he's going to get in the habit of stopping all the time,
right?
And he's going to start popping on you.
Exactly.
See, this again is a little bit more technical. It's where if you have somebody breathing over your shoulder that knows the story, okay, then they can coax you along and say, don't do this, don't do this, do this.
Exactly.
But again, I reiterate, get somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about. Not some bullshit artist. I'll tell you a little story that happened to me, okay? I was very competitive. I had a junior dog, in the field trial game that ended up with 42 points. I thought I was the greatest trainer in the world. And I got asked by, God bless his soul, but a gentleman by the name of Cliff Hunt that won a national in 1952. And man, I wanted to train with that man. And I told everybody that I'd want to train with that man. Anyway, finally, I get a phone call from Chuck Davies. He says, listen, Cliff and I are training on Saturday morning. You want to come down? And this was in Niagara Falls, and I lived in Scarborough, Ontario. He said, you be there for 7 o'clock in the morning. I was there for 5:30. That's how ambitious I was to get there. I went down, and I'm throwing the names out here because I look at this and I realize how gullible I was to a certain degree. And we end up doing a little kiss my ass triple out there, and my dog was a junior dog, and he fumbled his way through it and everything like that. And I was sticking my chest out saying that it was a nice dog, and other people were telling me the same thing. Then it came time to the blind. And the blind in those days, 100 yards was a pretty good open blind. This one was out there about 25 yards past the limit of my dog, okay? Mm-hmm. So anyway, Cliff comes up with his dog that belonged to Roger Magnuson, and he turns around and he runs him, and the dog goes off the wrong direction. He casts him, and he keeps on going the wrong direction. It's 3 or 4 times. He brings the dog back in, and old Cliff had an old pickup truck and with a white box on the back. And he calls the dog over, and I'm wondering, what the hell is he going to do now? How is he going to get that dog to really listen? And he pulls a pipe out from the top with a chain onto it. And he drops the chain down, he straps the dog to it, and he has a little bit of a lever, and he picks the dog up so only his hind feet are on the ground. And he gives him a hell of a whack with a whip, which we called a quirk in those days. And it says to him at the same time, you listen. And he cuts the dog down, the dog gets down, and he lines the blind. Man, was I impressed. I get home, my wife said, did you learn anything? I said, yep. I said, by the way, honey, I said, do you know how in the hell we could get a pipe on the top of our station wagon that I could use to train the dog? And I said, and I got to go buy a quirk, a whip. I said, because now I know how come Cliff Hunt won the national. He beat the hell out of that dog, and the dog went out and lined it. And I was sincere.
Crazy.
Until I talked to my pro, David Thompson, that said, Lorn, that's because this dog is a special animal that doesn't listen to anything. And that Cliff has to get him under control. You don't have that type of animal. That's so right. I didn't have to go looking for a pipe to put on the top. But that's how Charlie Brown burnt the shit out of his dog because it didn't get in the water. I'm going to burn the shit out of my dog because it didn't get in the water. And that's the farthest thing you do. You have to be able to train with somebody that says, nope, don't you. Walk up closer. Put his 2 front feet in the water if you have to. Show him that he's got to go in the water. Now back up 10 feet and try it again. Yeah, it didn't work again. Move up again and then back up. And as soon as you succeed in getting him to go into the water at 10 feet, when really the other guys were starting off at 50 feet, quit. Come back tomorrow and see if you can start at 10 feet and get him to hit the water. And if you do, then you'll be able to do it at 15, 20, 25. Okay? I take a young dog on a channel blind. I back up 100 yards, and I send him, and there's not a chance in hell that he's going to go in the water. I immediately move up and show him that he's supposed to get in the water. I might even throw a bumper out. And then I slowly back up, and I'll get back to maybe 25 yards. The next day I come out, I start at 25 yards, okay? And 9 times out of 10, that dog will get into that water, okay? He doesn't have to swim 200 yards once he's in the water. He just has to get into the water. So I might have a white bumper out there at 25 yards. And then I will back up a little bit more, and I'll put the white bumper out there at maybe 35 yards because I don't want him to get into the habit of always stopping at 25. And I'll slowly work it out so that I can get him to go into that channel from 100 yards and swim 100 yards. And that is all through taking it easy, showing him what you want. And as an amateur, you do all of that by yourself. You don't have to have Johnny Buck coming over to help you out and train.
Oh, we're much more like what you're getting at. Like we're much more thoughtful now than we used to be. You know, you're telling stories like that. And I mean, people were rough on their dogs, and there was only a certain amount of dogs that could take that type of approach. And,
Yep.
At the time, did
Yep.
they still have any style? Hard to say. I mean, they wouldn't have the style that the dogs have now because we're much more thoughtful about how we train and how we teach, because that's what we're focused on, and what you're talking about is teaching.
That's right. In the old days, before you were born, uh, if you went to a field trial and there were, in those days, there'd be 60 dogs, there would be 10 females and 50 males. Okay, we call them the honcho dogs. You could do anything to them and they still ran. Nowadays, you go and you might end up finding we don't have the numbers that we had, but say out of 40 dogs, it'll definitely be maybe 20 females, 20 males. And very, very often, the winner is a female, because we have learned to be a little bit more patient with them. You can't beat them up. You can't force it into them. You have to be a little bit more patient, and when you start looking at all of that, it's so easy to understand that if we could only do it. Take your time with that little female. She wants to go like a bat out of hell. Don't destroy her confidence, because if you do, her confidence may never come back. And with a male, he might fight his way through it.
There's a time and a place, like we've talked about some parts of force in our programs, and there is a time and a place that we have to teach our dog through force. Like when I ask you to go, you have to go. It's not a discussion that we're going to have. Like, you do have to go. But a lot of that has been, in a way, sort of taken out of the program, and we use it for certain things to teach the dog to maybe go against their natural tendency. Like when I ask you to go, you go and you run till you run out of the field. And the dogs that we have nowadays want to do that. They're big work dogs. And but again, all of this stuff so far that we've talked about is all based off of teaching the dog the skills that it needs to be a better marker through memory and learn the beginnings of how to run a blind.
Yep.
Through pile work. So once you get done your pile work, like you were talking about channel blinds and stuff like that, but once you get done your pile work, you talked about T pattern.
Yep.
And that would be your next step.
Right. A T pattern, definitely. When you come out of that, you can go to it. You have a T pattern. That's exactly it. Some people will say double T.
Yep.
I say single T. Okay, because I don't have the time, and in a hot summer, you want as many changes of direction and as many stops as possible. Now, again, you're touching onto that. Perfect example. I used to run, on the advice of a pro that wrote a program, you run this dog on the T pattern until he doesn't want to go anymore, and you make him go again. That is the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
I run a T pattern now. I establish the middle line, the center line, and then I force on the center line on a low level, say a 3, okay? And this is way over some amateur's head to starting off for the first time. The next time I send him, he goes to flare, I immediately say no. And I walk up to the area where he flared, and I send him through. And he goes and he picks up a pile. He picks up a white bumper. Then I come back and I stand back 10 yards from where he flared, and I send him again. And if he flares again, no. And I walk up to where he was not supposed to, put him on the line and send him. Eventually, I've taken the flare out of him. I can go back onto the main place, and I can turn around and send him, and he's going to run right over the spot that he was nicked on, forced on. Okay? And that might take a day. It might take an hour. It might take 2 minutes, depending on the dog. Okay? Now what I do is that I send him through to that center pile 2 or 3 times, and I quit. Because I'm a pro, I got 25 other dogs to do. I quit, which is the greatest thing, because if I keep on beating him into it, I dig myself a hole.
Absolutely.
The next day I come out, I send him down through there. He goes down flying. Okay? I maybe nicked him on a low 4. I'm going to drop it to a 2 or a low 2. I send him down. Nick, back, I bring him back, I send him down to the pile again, and he goes through. And I used to think, my God, yeah, but I didn't do it on a very high level. No, it wasn't the level. A 3 doesn't hurt a dog. You can hold it in your hand. It was the element of surprise and the element that I had a little bit higher level when I said sit. And now I've got the dog that he will actually go over top of a burn.
Mm.
Okay. And that is part and parcel to get that dog to run a straight line. Okay, onto it. So here we go. We're finished teaching the dog the center line. Now I walk out at the crossover point. Okay. And I sit him down and I say over and I put my hand out. Now, here is a situation, people, to pay attention to. I say over softly and I put my hand out. And the dog doesn't know what the hell I want. So maybe I toss a bumper to the pile. And you want to have that pile out there at least 50, 60 feet. If you have a little bit more ability, even better. Okay, so you bring the dog back in. Now you sit him in front of you and you do the no force, but the same thing as you did on force to pile. You're standing 5 feet, 10 feet in front of him, and you say back with the opposite hand, okay, of what you just did the over with. Now you bring him back on, you set him in front of you, and you say over, and you make him go over, and he runs over there, picks it up, and comes back. So then I do another straight back with the other hand, and I do another over with him. Now I've got that side established. Okay? Now what I want to do is that I want to establish a second side, but I don't do that the same day. I let him think on that one, because 9 times out of 10, a dog is either left-handed or right-handed. They'll do it better one way than they will the other.
I totally agree.
I can explain to you what happens, but I mean to say you have to have a slow motion camera to see it. So it's not important. It's just you'll pick up. And you do the same thing. Exactly. You do the same thing on the other side. Okay? And so you might end up having to do 5 or 6 overs and 5 or 6 backs, but you're doing this in a 30-foot, 40-foot area. The distance that you have your center pile, I like to play around with about 65, 70 yards. Some people say they like it longer. Why? You want to tire them out quicker? So anyway, now what I do, I got to get this dog to stop, okay, and take an over. Yeah, I got to get that dog to go through when he's not told to stop, to go to the back pile. So back, and he goes to the back pile, picks it up. Okay? Now what I do, if he was doing the overs well, I will now stand maximum 5 or 6 feet from the crossover point. I will send him back. Toot! Stop him in the 5 feet. He looks at me like, what the hell happened? Straighten him out, okay, and which is important, because if you don't start straightening him out, you're teaching him to sit cockeyed. Straighten him out, maybe with a little tab rope or whatever, and say over. And he did it. My God, I've got my dog stopping. I got my dog giving me an over. I got my dog going back. And you maybe stop him 5 or 6 times, depending on the dog, and you give him an over after you've done the straight back. Okay? And in this situation now, I've got my dog stopping, going to the right, and also going straight back when I tell him back. And I'm 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet from him. The guy says, yeah, but you got to get him longer than that. No, I don't. I teach him the other side the same way. Okay? Now I can back up 20 feet and send him through. Next time, stop him on the whistle. Okay? However, it's a situation in which I give him a blast. And he stopped real quick. Over, and he goes over and picks it up. Comes back in, send him down, send him through. Stop him the next time, blow the whistle, blow it right out of my head, put it that way, over the other way, and put my hand out. Yep. And now I've got the dog doing almost a perfect T pattern. Okay? And I will turn around and I will put down maybe 10 bumpers on the long pile and maybe 3 on each of the over piles. And that is the number of times that I'm going to send the dog. As for field trials, I go into a modified tee, which I then will put an angle back in.
Right.
And I teach the angle back separately from the tee. I go on to the tee pattern where you run it the same place day after day, and I'll have 1 or 2 bumpers on a straight back, and I'll have 5 or 6 or 7 bumpers on an angle back. Okay? And I will try to coax that dog when I stick my hand up, maybe 5 or 10 degrees from my ear, that he will turn and he will go out and pick up. So now I've got over, over, straight back, and angle back the other way. Now I can go out and run my pattern blinds. So I have a blind set out maybe 150 yards. Okay. I come in, I have 5 or 6 bumpers on that blind. I take my dog. Now I have to do obedience. So I tell my client that I did obedience that day. Sit him on the tablet or the mat or whatever, and I walk out 10 or 15 feet, and I say, here. And he comes running to me. Sit. And he sits. Okay? If he didn't come running to me, I might say, here, Nick, on a low level. He comes to me, I say, sit. If he onto it, then I walk maybe 25 yards, depending on the dog. I turn around and I say, sit. Okay? Sit. And the reason why I say sit for, a lot of times the dogs will start to move. So I just reinforce the sit. No burn, just reinforce it with the words. Then I say here. Now he's supposed to be picking up the difference between sit and here. He's not busting out to you because he knows you're going to call him. And you work yourself out there by doing that, walking 25 yards, 30 feet, doesn't matter, until you get about 20 feet from the pile of white bumpers you get out there. And you call him out there and you throw him a bumper onto the pile, sit, dead bird, dead, back, and he runs out there. Okay? What you're doing upon his return, okay, you're walking back towards your platform or your mat. And you stop, depending on how aggressive the dog was, you walk back maybe 35 yards. And you go through the entire preparation again. You don't just say, hi, back, dead bird, dead, good, back. Okay? The dog runs to the pile. Now you're back up 50 yards. Okay? Sit down, dead bird, back. And he runs to the pile, the same pile. He knows where it is. He runs out there. And you try to work it out so that you're all the way back to the mat, okay, and you send them. And there's your first leg of a pattern blind, okay? Tomorrow morning, you come out, and you run that cold. You've already done the modified T, the T pattern. You just run it cold to get it out there as well as possible. And he gets out there after 15 casts. You got him out there. That's all that's important, okay? You don't worry about, you don't want a slow sit. If you do get a slow sit or something like that, it could be because he's confused. But if you don't get a slow sit, now you come back and you start the same thing. And now you had one blind at third base. Now your next blind is at second base. Okay, the distances are further. And you, again, sit. And the dog starts to come when you start walking away from him. And you got an eye in the back of your head. And you say, sit, and you nick him. And he sits. So now you've just taught him to be steady. And you walk, and you maybe get out there 50 yards, and you call him. And he comes. And again, you're 10 feet from, or 20 feet, I should say, from the pile. You send him. Okay? He picks it up. Walk back 25, 30 yards. Send him again, send him again, send him again, until you get back to the mat. And you turn around, and then the next day you come out, and you run the first blind cold, and you've got a white pail, don't forget though, on those things. So you run the second blind cold, and you keep hacking them and hacking them and hacking them until there's only one bumper on the first one. So you don't have multiple bumpers on there where you can pick it up at the wrong place. And you keep handling them with overs and backs and everything. Okay? And then you come in the third day and you establish the third pile. And now the fourth day, you come out and you run the 3 of them cold. And you hack your way through it. And at the end of 2 weeks, your dog is lining them. And he'll line the first one better than he lined the second one. And he'll line the second one better than the third one. So he becomes efficient. And now he can almost, maybe with one cast, line all 3. So now you say, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have you pick up the last one first. And the first one second. And the third one last. The one in the middle. Okay? And now you've got your dog doing memory blinds, running out 100, 125, 130 yards, depending how efficient you are. and he's able to do a blind. Now you've done that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, and he's going like a bat out of hell to get out there. Better than he did the first day where he pussyfooted off the mat. Now he knows where he's going. So now you go out and you run a set of marks because you want to run senior, and you do 2 singles, okay, and he runs out and he does the 2 singles. Now you have to do a blind. And you ran 1 single at second base. You ran the other single at first base. Don't forget now, these guys are visible. They're not running in camouflage. You have a white coat on to pick them up. And now you put a blind out at the dugout of the visitors. And the blind has a white pail on it or a white stake. And you run the dog to that blind. And he tries to immediately curl into where he picked up the mark. Okay? But what you did is that you turned around and you stopped him real quick. And you started casting him with angle back, angle back, angle back. Finally, he gets to the white pail, which is only out there maybe 50 yards. Okay? And he picks up the bumper and he comes back and he's happier than a pig.
Everybody's happy at that point.
That's right. And then the next day, you do the same thing. Okay? And you might, depending on the dog, depending on how much land you have, you might throw the same double. Okay? And you do it, and all of a sudden you notice, Jesus, I brought him in. I said, dead bird, turned him around with a heel, and he went out there and he picked it up. Oh, my gosh. Oh, you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to take that 50 yards that he was out there, or 50 feet, or whatever you put out, and I'm going to extend it by 10 or 15 feet. And now all of a sudden I got him running 125-yard blinds. And my dog is only 13 months old. He's stopping on the whistle. He's running out after he's picked up 2 marks. He does a blind. Okay, now I'm really going to test him. Now I'm going to put the blind on the other side. Okay, and I'm going to have the mark. Okay, he's going to run to the dugout, but I'm going to have the go bird at first base. So I'm going to throw the one at second towards third, the one at first towards second, send him, comes back in, and he's blanked out. He doesn't know what the hell to do. Second base gunner, throw him a silent throw or go hey, hey. And he runs out there, he picks it up, and now I have to do that again, short blind towards the dugout, almost backwards. And I send him. And I hack him until he gets out there. But now he's starting to identify a white pail or a white post is something to run to. And I do that until it becomes efficient. Bang, 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 bang. Okay? And I try to stay away from the fact that I'm going to train with my buddies and they're going to turn around and put a blind up through the marks. Because all I'm trying to teach this dog is not to go back and do an old fall. Okay? And I do that maybe for 2 or 3 or 4 days. And then when I run into my buddies, I show them how my dog can do 100-yard blind, okay, without having a problem, a big problem. I might have to cast him 10 times. If I cast him 10 times and he changes direction or he gets out that distance, that's a great accomplishment. And at the end of about 2 months, I'm going to run a senior and I'm going to pass. And you're going to say, well, yeah, but there's senior, there's holding blinds, there's guys in camouflage and everything like that. Eventually, there is a changeover where you take the white coat and you start replacing it a little bit with a camouflage. So then it's the person. It's no longer the color. But you break a dog in with white. Okay? So you give them all the advantages.
Yep, I totally agree. We should be wearing, the dog has to be able to see the gunner, and he has to be able to see the mark.
Right.
We're teaching.
And, this podcast is covered so much. If these individuals that are listening to this brand new comprehend 5% of it, you're very, very intelligent, successful people.
Well, and that's why it's good. That's why it's good that it's recorded. But I wondered if we could talk about one more thing. I mean, we could go for hours, but one of the last parts of that beer
do you have in your fridge?
What's that?
How many beer do you have in your fridge?
They're always full here, man. It's Canada. I wondered if we could talk a little bit about swim by, Lorn.
Okay. Oh man, I do that a lot different than a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start off I'll start off at a little bit of a pond. Maybe if you can find a place that across to the other side is I'm looking at this 40 feet. And to each side, or at least to one side, it would maybe be 40 feet. Okay.
Yep.
I put a pail across because now I have to force on water. Okay. This is the start of my swim by. I have
Right.
to force it. Okay. I back up maybe 10 yards. I send the dog across the white pail, or I throw a bumper to the white pail, whatever way I can get him out there. Okay. So now he knows he's got to go across. So I come back in and I send him there three or four, 3 or 4 times. Now what I have to do, the same thing I did on the lining drill on the T pattern, is that I have to be able to nick him somewhere in that straight line that he's taken to go across, that he's not going to flare and decide that he's going to go and climb out 20 yards away from where that white pile is. So again, I do this on a low level, people. It might be a high 2 or a low 3. Screw the low 4 anticipation that you can do if you've got a maniac. But no, just get him used to it. So you maybe spend 2 days sending that dog to that straight thing across, and you're going to nick him over the 2 days a total of 3 times. Not 10 times, 3 times. And now you've got him so that he's going across. Straight line, despite the fact that he gets a little nick. And don't think that at any time, oh God, he's doing it so well, I got to increase the pressure. You've accomplished it by keeping it on the low pressure, and he's not paying that much of it. He's not freaking out on the little bit of a burn. So now you can say my collar condition is pretty good too, because this dog is actually trying to almost speed up. When I say back, you see him, he starts to go faster. Now I have to teach him to stop. Okay? How do I do that? I have a rope on him again, in some instances, depending on how good he was on the T pattern. I blow the whistle, he hits the water, I let him go 10 feet, and I blow the whistle as loud as I can. That's it! Whatever. Okay? And I throw him a bumper. Throw him a bumper. He gets the bumper, and he comes back in. I send him again. This time, he goes maybe 15 feet. I blow, he turns around, because now he's not stopping because he heard the whistle. He's stopping because he thinks I'm going to throw him a bumper. Okay? And I do that maybe 3 times, 4 times, and then I have to send him all the way across 3 or 4 times because he's liable to stop. Okay? So really what transpires onto that is that I throw a bumper across so that he will go through. He won't stop at 10 feet or something like that. Now what I have to do is that I have to get him to turn around real quickly. Okay, what I have to do, I have to get him to stop. So now I send him through to the pile 2 or 3 times. Now I let him get out there maybe halfway across the pond. I throw a bumper up in the air, and when it hits the top, I blow the whistle, and as he turns around real slow, bang, the bumper falls in front of him or around him. I used to worry about being in back. It doesn't matter. Now the bumper fell from the sky. I've just taught that dog to sit on it. And I might do that for 2 days or 3 days until I blow the whistle, excuse me, and bang, he turns around so quick, expecting that thing to fall from the sky. Now I've got him stopping on water. Okay? Now I can go out there and not basically have to throw a bumper. I will throw him one occasionally, but I will more or less now have him stopping pretty quickly. And that is how I get my dogs to turn around, tread water, and stuff like that. Now, all of a sudden you get into a situation where he turns quickly and he looks at you, but he starts paddling sideways. Okay? What you can do is that you throw a bumper past him on the line that he should have remained on. And that will stop that coasting, as we call it. Or he turns, and before he starts to coast from one side to the other, for some reason they all seem to want to coast to the right, you cast him with the opposite hand. You don't use the right hand to give him a straight back. You use the left hand if he's turned to the right. Okay? And that is how you get your dog to stop quickly on water. Stopping him quickly on water is easier than stopping him quickly on land.
That method that you used right there when you talked about throwing the bumper in the air and just about when it's just about to hit the water, you blow the whistle. I know you taught me that a long time ago, and there was definitely dogs that I struggled with throughout the process, like over the years. And man, what a good tool, because you think to yourself, well, people might think, well, I'll just use more force. I'll get him. I'll get like you said, I'll get the son of a bitch to stop, and you nail him with the collar. But we're trying to teach the dog to have a good attitude in the water, and we want to focus on teaching. And man, when you hit that whistle and all of a sudden splash, like they whip around. And I've even used that like in a review at the start of the year with the dog, because our water season is so short here. I always review swim by and a swim by tune up and the fundamentals of what makes up swim by and doing water blinds and stuff is a good solid sit. So I always go back to that method that you taught me about throwing a bumper, and when it's just about to hit the water, blow the whistle.
Yep. Now we're continuing. Now we're almost ready for swim by, which theoretically swim by is a T pattern, on water. So I've sent the dog through a couple of times. Now I blow the whistle, and the only thing that he's used to is a straight back. So what I do, I throw a bumper to the right or the left, whichever one I choose, I blow it, he breaks, he goes over, he comes back.
Oh, I'm losing you, Lorn.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Hey, every time a cloud cover goes over here. Anyway, what actually happens is that you stop him, you throw a bumper to the right, and he goes over and he picks it up and he comes back in. Okay? So now you've got him, when you put your right hand up, he's going to go. So you want him to be able to climb out of the water at the end. So you have the bumper or a pail or something visible, but you have it 5 or 10 feet out of the water. He goes out. Now, here is the biggest thing, the problem. The dog does it perfectly. He goes over there, picks it up, and he runs around the outside. He doesn't come back through the water. He runs around. Let him run around, because he has to be balanced out that the water is not the only safe place, Then you turn around and you do the same thing maybe 2 days, 3 days later on the other side. You teach him the leftover. You throw him a bumper, he goes over, picks it up, and he comes in whatever way he wants to come in. It does not matter, Now what I do in order to teach him, I will take the dog with me. I will set him on the left pile. I will walk over to the right pile, and I will call him to me. And I'll make a big fuss around him, and I walk around the pond to get back, and he follows me around. He doesn't have to come back through the water, So now what I do is that I send him, and he goes over there, and he picks up the bumper, and I am in the process now of saying over, and I might be almost working myself into the situation where I'm standing where he's got to exit. I'm teaching. I'm not trying to burn him up or anything like that. Eventually, at the end of the day or at the end of the session, I can give him an over. He goes and picks the thing up. I stop him. I say over. He gets back in the water, and he swims all the way across to the other pail. I do not start nickering him there. I let him come. If he wants to, I say, here, come on. If he jumps in the water and comes back, it's okay. But if he goes around the corner of the pond, it's okay also. I'm not teaching him to be in the water at the present time. I'm teaching him to cast into the water. And I continue with that, for quite a length of time. Now, one thing to remember, people, when you're doing swim by, you don't just do overs. You also have to stop him and give him a straight back. And when upon his return, when he's coming back and he hits that magic spot that you stopped him, you start saying over, until you get him to climb out. Now, here's what happens. He doesn't, because he's used to coming directly back to you when he's on the straight back. But you're saying over, 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 over. But he climbs out of the water. You take the bumper out of his mouth. You put your collar on a low level. You throw the thing back into the water. And you say back. And you nick. And as soon as he hits the water, there's no more pressure. And then you start with over, over, over. And you might have to do that 2 or 3 times in a very short distance. But eventually he climbs out at the safe spot, which is the longest part of the pond. Okay? And you keep doing that so that you can throw one directly to the back. You stop him, give him an over, and he goes sailing out to the safe side and gets out and comes running around the side. And now you've just taught him the right side. The left side is going to be very easy to teach him. He knows what to do. But you don't start burning with the collar unless he disobeys you from taking that over that he's done numerous times. And it's not on a 7. It's on a low level.
Right. We're always careful in the water.
Piles back into the water. And it might end up being that you're going to end up on the safe exit spot. Okay? You're going to have to keep walking around the pond to get him to be at the safe exit spot. Now, if you turn around and you say to me, I don't have a pond like that. Well, do you have the end of a channel line? So now you want to teach him the left side, the leftover. What do? You go on to the other side of the pond. You reverse everything. So you're giving him a left now to get out. Gets out the same spot, goes very quickly. But at least he stops, gives you an over to where he knows he's supposed to get out. So you can do a swim by at the end of a channel, at the end of a small pond or something like that. Okay? Now what you're basically involved in, you're doing your thing. I do not do very much on the small pond. I have a philosophy. If I have a channel line, which is one of the most training situations there are, I will start going with swim by on that channel line. The farther I make him swim, the better the swim by sets in. And at the end of 3 days or 4 days, I will be standing there on the bank when he's returning from the pile. Okay? And I will say over, and he'll swim to the end of that channel. And I have just de-cheated. I have just done a whole pile of stuff with the dog, okay, to teach him to stay in the water. And that's how my swim by progresses. In the old days, it was burn this, burn that, burn this, burn that. And I can honestly tell you, I ruined dogs because of it.
Yep.
They got so paranoid around water that they didn't even want to drink, never mind get into it.
Well, Lorn, okay. I think that's probably a good place to end for today.
Yeah.
You've covered a pile of stuff. And it's been great. You basically covered the whole first part of basics in the transition. So
yeah.
So like you say, if people can comprehend this and take little bite-sized pieces of it, there's definitely a lot of great information there. And part of it being take your time, be careful around the water with pressure, don't act on emotion, make sure things are planned and do what's right by your dog as far as pressure goes,
Yeah, because you can get them too watery, okay? Or you get them so that you don't do quite enough, and they end up being cheaters. So the idea is you don't want them too watery, but you don't want them. And a young dog should stay in the water, but not be totally petrified of it.
Yep.
Okay, now this weekend down in Moncton, is it Moncton this weekend or next weekend, Matthew, that there's a trial?
It is. It's not this weekend. This weekend, I think, is maybe Eastern Flyway.
Okay, well, anyway, somebody that's down in the Maritimes, okay, can go over and watch one of these trials because it's field trials, not hunt test, okay, and maybe talk to a couple of people. There's going to be people there. Matthew, are you going?
I'll be going to Moncton, yep.
Okay, you'll be at Moncton. There's a pile of people down there that are pretty efficient. Dan DeVos will be down there.
Carl Clark's down here right now.
Carl Clark?
Yeah.
Karen Greener is with Carl Clark. She can help out onto it. Walt Vesey is down to be down there, and they've made strides in PEI on their dog training abilities. So you talk to some of those guys. Just walk up and say, listen, I have the thing to ask you, okay? And ask them a question. and ask him to explain it to you if you don't understand it. And if you run into a guy by the name of Paul with a Chesapeake, find out how you can mix vodka with Perrier and not get drunk. Okay?
Paulie McKinnon, he is a beauty.
And in this situation, he's done one hell of a job. I can tell you.
No question he has.
With that Chesapeake, okay, I have to say that he's going to be a wrecking force down in the Maritimes with a Chesapeake.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean go out and buy a Chesapeake. That just means that he's going to be a wrecking force.
Absolutely.
Okay?
He's put the work in for sure. He's dedicated to that dog. They're a good team.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when he sends you a video at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is 5 o'clock your time, 6 o'clock his time. You really appreciate receiving a video about a Chesapeake that just did a water blind. So, no, all the kidding. I missed it this year. I generally go down to the Maritimes and spend 3 weeks with Walter and the boys down there. This year, my wife has taken a little bit of a ill turn for health, and I didn't feel safe by leaving for 3 weeks and stuff like that, but I hope to see everybody next year.
Yeah, okay? Absolutely.
No, and don't forget, Guy, you owe me a goose shoot.
Absolutely. Anytime, brother. Okay. We're shooting them.
Okay, I know you are. Yeah. That's for sure. I've seen some of your videos.
Yeah.
But listen, people, try. It's a point that if you get into a real bind and you can't, you can always give me a phone call at one time or another and ask me a question. Okay, and it's Matthew will give you my phone number.
Yep.
If I am available in the evening, say at 7 o'clock when I'm dozing on the couch watching television, give me a call and I'll try and explain something to you, or I'll try and point you in the right direction to go and see this person, that person, or this person that's going to help you out.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you were a hunter, I tell you right now, it's a great thing to have a dog that's under control.
No question.
Yeah, and it's a situation in which you try to get that dog to be a good duck hunter instead of a whining son of a gun at the front of the canoe that breaks there. They start breaking on shot, then they break on birds falling, and then first thing you know, 2 weeks later, they're breaking on here they come.
Yeah.
And that's gospel truth, because I have had hunting dogs in the past that were not steady or whine continually when they're sitting in the blind. And that is hard on the elbow, not on the ears, on the elbow, because you give it a reef with your elbow, telling it to shut up, and you hit the shock collar under its neck, and that hurts like hell. Okay.
Well, Lorn, look, I really, really appreciate your time here today and all the knowledge and advice that you've given here. It's, really something that people should take in, and it's really invaluable because, I mean, you've been doing this for years over many dogs, and to be able to pass that on and have it on this podcast is just wonderful. So again, as always, I really appreciate your time. I'm sorry to hear about your wife and that you're not going to make it, but there's always a spot for you open down here in the Maritimes, and definitely plan to come down for a goose shoot.
Okay, Guy. I will be talking to you anytime.
We'll see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.